Chapter 1. Strange Events in London. London was shifting. Holmes could feel it, not in the way a detective senses criminal intent, but in something far more elemental. At first, the disruptions were subtle. A street sign on Fleet Street suddenly bore markings in a script unknown to history. The morning edition of the Times displayed tomorrow's date. A man claimed he had walked through Covent Garden only to find himself, moments later, at the docks, without ever taking a step. Holmes had investigated many cases of deception, trickery, and madness. But this was something else. Watson joined him at Scotland Yard as reports flooded in. Objects appearing where they shouldn't be. Witnesses claiming to have seen events before they happened. And then, most concerning of all, a man spotted in two places at once. Holmes pressed the Yard's chief for details. Two officers swear they saw him purchasing tobacco on Fleet Street, while another saw the same man emerging from a cab at Piccadilly, at the same moment in time. Holmes felt a familiar chill creeping along his spine. The fractures were deepening. Time was bending in ways that defied reality. Watson pulled Holmes aside, whispering, "This cannot be mere coincidence. Something is happening, something beyond reason." Holmes nodded. Beyond reason indeed. And then, just as Watson finished speaking, the air shimmered. It was barely perceptible at first, a flicker along the edges of perception, like heat rising from cobblestone streets. But in an instant, the fog curled unnaturally, a presence taking shape. Watson gasped. Holmes took a careful step forward. And before them, Hermes stood, his golden sandals barely touching the ground. With a knowing gaze and a smirk like time itself was his plaything, he said, "Gentlemen, we have much to discuss." Chapter 2. Hermes enters the fray. The fabric of time was unraveling, and Hermes felt it before any mortal could comprehend it. It was not a ripple, not a mere disturbance. It was a fracture, a wound tearing through reality itself. He stood at the threshold of existence, the boundary between mortal perception and divine awareness, watching as time itself shuddered. This was no ordinary interference. The Morlocks had not merely stepped into the past, they had altered it. And so Hermes moved. The search for Wells and Weena. The flow of time bent as Hermes slipped between moments. Mortals experienced time linearly, bound by the constraints of seconds and minutes. But to Hermes, time was a landscape, a tapestry he could traverse at will. He could see where Wells had gone, where Weena had vanished. He could sense their presence within the fracture, a force far beyond the minds of men, but entirely within his domain. And so he arrived. In the future, the broken ruins that Wells had once fled from, Hermes stepped without sound, his presence like the wind itself. Wells sat among the shattered remnants of his own discovery, staring at the place where his time machine had once been. The loss of it had struck him deeply, but it was more than mere theft. It was the realization that the Morlocks had taken more than a machine. They had taken control of time itself. Hermes approached, his form half seen, half felt, as though reality had yet to decide whether he was truly present. Wells looked up, at first uncertain, but as he gazed upon the golden-clad figure, his mind grasped something beyond scientific explanation. "You are Hermes," Wells murmured, unsure whether he was dreaming or truly witnessing the presence of a god. Hermes smiled, the weight of the universe behind his gaze. "You have meddled in time's stream before, Wells, but now time has meddled with you." Weena, standing nearby, instinctively stepped back, sensing something vast within Hermes, something beyond comprehension. "I must undo this fracture," Hermes continued, stepping forward. "But I cannot do it alone. You and your machine created the imbalance, Wells. You will help restore it." Wells stood, his mind racing. "How? The machine is gone. The Morlocks have taken the past," Hermes finished, "and unless we act now, they will rewrite it. The stakes become clear." Hermes extended his hand, not in offering but in command. Wells had no choice but to follow, for he understood now. His greatest invention had not merely given him a glimpse into time's mysteries. It had set a force in motion that threatened to unravel existence itself. As Hermes prepared to move through time's shifting veil once more, he turned to Weena, studying her with a gaze that knew more than any mortal could ever grasp. "You should not be here," Hermes murmured to her, though there was no malice in his voice, only a deep understanding of the paradox she had become. Weena met his gaze, fear in her eyes, but she did not argue. She, too, knew that time had taken her where she did not belong. And so the journey began. As Holmes and Watson struggled to untangle the anomalies in London, as the Morlocks wove their influence deeper into history, Hermes led Wells into the stream of time itself, toward a battle that would decide the fate of past, present, and future. Chapter 3. The Gathering of the Gods. Time trembled. The veil between past, present, and future had thinned to the brink of collapse. Mortals had sensed the anomaly. Holmes with his relentless deductions, Wells with his scientific mind, Watson with his quiet unease. But the gods knew. Hermes stood within the fracture, gazing beyond the shifting currents of time, beyond the broken moments where the Morlocks lurked, beyond the ripple that had carried Nemo's secrets from Atlantis into the fabric of history itself. He could not repair this alone. And so he called upon the others. Athena, wisdom in the face of chaos. A pulse resonated through the city as Athena stepped into London's distorted streets. Her presence was not merely seen. It was felt, a force pressing against reality itself. Holmes, for all his brilliance, had never stood before a being like this. He watched as the goddess of wisdom examined the chaos, her sharp eyes piercing through the illusion of stability that time had tried to maintain. "The Morlocks do not merely disrupt history," Athena said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "They seek to remake it." Watson, still struggling to reconcile the existence of gods among men, exhaled sharply. "Then we are not facing a single crime, we are facing the unmaking of the world." Athena turned toward Holmes, her expression unreadable. "And you, detective, will unravel the patterns that time itself has woven against us." Holmes inclined his head, a rare flash of respect in his gaze. "Then let us begin." Kronos, master of time's flow. The air warped as Kronos arrived, stepping from the unseen edges of existence itself. He moved slowly, deliberately, his presence sending ripples through the very laws of time. Wells felt it immediately. The future he had once studied was no longer distant. It was alive, pressing against reality, shifting, threatening to collapse. Kronos studied the fracture, his ancient mind processing the distortions with eerie calm. "Time is wounded. It bleeds." Hermes turned to him. "Can it be healed?" Kronos paused, his gaze sweeping across London's bending moments, clocks shifting between hours, footsteps echoing before they were taken. "Only if the Morlocks are removed before their influence becomes absolute." Wells swallowed. The weight of this moment was greater than any adventure he had ever faced. Hecate, keeper of the crossroads. From the mist, Hecate emerged, not walking, not moving, but simply existing, as though she had always been there, waiting for the moment when fate itself stood upon a precipice. Holmes instinctively felt the shift, the presence of something that defied logic, something that chose paths where none should exist. Hecate's voice was neither loud nor soft. It was simply understood. "The Morlocks do not walk alone. They have found a guide." Wells stiffened. "Nemo?" Hecate nodded, her expression unreadable. "One man who has glimpsed time's secrets. One man who believes he can control fate." Watson exhaled. "Then we are no longer merely fighting creatures of the future. We are fighting a man who has seen all possibilities." Hecate lifted a hand, and for the briefest of moments, reality split. Glimpses of timelines flickered and vanished. She had seen them all. She knew the stakes. Apollo, the light against the darkness. From the fractured skyline, light descended. Apollo arrived with a brilliance that shattered the mist, pushing back the creeping distortion, forcing order upon the chaos. London, for a fleeting instant, felt normal again. Holmes shielded his eyes against the glow. Watson let out a breath of relief he had not realized he was holding. Apollo studied the shifting landscape with the precision of a warrior, his gaze lingering upon the distant disturbances, the places where history was weakest. "They seek the dark," Apollo murmured, "but light does not surrender." Hermes turned to the gathered gods, nodding. "Then it begins." The final stand approaches. The gathering was complete. Athena, Kronos, Hecate, and Apollo had joined Hermes, each bringing their power and wisdom to restore order. Yet even as their presence stabilized reality, the storm beyond their reach grew stronger. The Morlocks were not idle. Nemo had seen too much. And before the gods could strike, London shifted once more. Cliffhanger. The veil collapses. The very fabric of existence cracked, the city warped. And in the heart of the distortion, the stargate of Atlantis pulsed. Something was coming through,